I'm Eric Ressler,
I'm Jonathan Hicken.
and this is Designing Tomorrow. Jonathan, welcome back to Designing Tomorrow, my friend.
In the digital space, I haven't seen you in months.
Yeah, but we hang out all the time. So for listeners who can't see us, we are in a new space. Jonathan, do you want to tell us a little bit about where we are right now?
Eric, welcome to the inaugural recording in the new Seymour Studios.
Seymour Studios, man.
Seymour Studios.
It was once just a figment of both of our imaginations, and now here we are.
I mean, we did it super quickly. We're gonna dive into this. Actually, we'll do a whole episode on this in the new year. But I mean, this came together pretty quickly, and it was incredibly influenced by our Designing Tomorrow work together.
We are eating our own dog food here on Design Tomorrow in a couple different ways. So I'm getting more and more storytelling and content and brand into Jonathan's world, and Jonathan's getting more and more leadership and organizational development and strategy into my world. And I mean that's the whole point, right, of doing this together, is we get to learn from each other.
We promised each other when we were getting into this co-hosting business that we wanted this to be something that was fun to do as friends, something that was going to be good for our respective businesses, something that would help, you know, us grow as leaders and as creative people in our own right. And as a result, we built a freaking studio.
That's right, man. And I mean, there's a lot of exciting stuff that's going to be happening from the studio for our show at Design Tomorrow, but also for you and the Seymour Center. And like you said, we're going to do a whole kind of like behind the scenes breakdown of that and treat it as a little mini case study, not just like the building of the studio, but how you're integrating it as an asset, as an opportunity for the storytelling at the Seymour Center. It's going to be super exciting. But today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of a look back, a reflection on 2025 as a year for the sector, for each other individually. It's been a year, man. It's been a year for everybody that I've been in touch with professionally and personally in different ways. But it hasn't all been bad. I think there's been a lot of folks who are, you know, focusing on the burnout, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some burnout that I had this year personally. But there's been a lot of good that's come out of this year too. And I know things have been going really well for you personally and at the Seymour Center. So I want to just kind of invite you to start. What's been good for you this year, man?
Yeah, look, I mean, when we were sitting here a year ago, kind of thinking about what the podcast was going to look like in 2025, I mean, we were both feeling down. We were like, what is the sector going to look like?
Yeah.
How's Seymour Center going to get through, you know, these federal cuts? Thank goodness we at Seymour Center are in a really good financial position. We have not been impacted deeply by the federal funding cuts. That's because we're funded mostly by our own community, and the community has stepped up.
Yep.
And in fact, that leads me to the first thing that I'm so proud of is that Santa Cruz was identified by GoFundMe recently, by a report they put out, as one of the top 10 most generous cities as defined by participation in their campaigns. But I actually really think it reflects something true about this place. And that showed up in our work at Seymour Center. You know, just one project, we're restoring this big blue whale skeleton. And with one singular small house party fundraiser, we raised over $350,000.
Awesome, man.
And that was back in April. And that work we're getting started on it. So I feel so proud, and I feel so, I want to just reflect and be grateful for this community and the generosity of people here. And I know Santa Cruz is not alone. I know that everybody who's listening is relying on some sort of generosity out there. And I really think that showed up this year.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. And one of the things we can reflect on also is, and let's just get into this, I guess, you've been missing from the show. And why has that been? It's really kind of a silly reason. And we'll get into it a little bit now, and we'll talk more about it in the new year. But we used to shoot the show in my backyard in my studio at home. And that was great. It was fun. You know, we turned a really tiny space into something that looked a lot bigger on camera and sounded great. I mean, I'm a musician, so the space is like really dialed in from a sound standpoint. But it was, you know, it was disruptive. Like, I mean, there were times like literally I was bringing my kitchen table into the back, and my wife's like, how long are we going to do this for?
I know, like your daughters are like running around with my son Damien, and they're like running around. We're carrying furniture through your backyard over like persimmons on the ground just to get the backyard studio set up. Yeah, it would take hours.
The end result was incredible, but you know, behind the scenes it was a little messy. And so it basically led to a point where it's just like, hey, this isn't going to work. And then that alongside all the stuff going on for me personally this year and professionally also, with just like really having to step up and support clients going through a lot and kind of roll up my sleeves and grind. This year's been a grind for me in in hard ways, but in really good ways too, which I'll get more into in a second. But all that led to, a pretty long hiatus without you on the show, which has been, I'm just going to be honest, it's been a little lonely, man.
I miss you too, man. But respect though. I mean, the interviews you've been doing are incredible, and I'm looking forward to doing some co-hosted interviews this year too.
Yeah. So for listeners, we're in the middle of just kind of experimenting right now with our content. So in Jonathan's absence, I've been just kind of trying to keep the show going. Have been really honored to interview some incredible people who have just, stepped up and said yes, with just literally cold outreach, just DMing people I'm inspired by, that I've been following, that have interested me, mostly on LinkedIn, just saying, hey, we've got this show, would love to have you on. And I've been honestly overwhelmed by some of the folks we've had who have said yes, who are pretty big names in the space. I'm talking about like Mike Nellis, Amanda Littman. We have Brady Josephson from Charity Water, who just came on. It's going to be coming out soon. So, when we started the show, we kind of very intentionally decided not to do interviews, because everyone does interviews, and it was just like, hey, well, let's do something different. But I think we're going to keep doing some interviews, because they've been really awesome. And I think this gives us an opportunity, and we'll even do this a little bit today, to kind of break down some of the things we're hearing through those interviews, and to kind of piggyback a little bit on one of the things you just mentioned about giving. We were really lucky to do an interview breaking down the Bank of America philanthropy study on major donor giving. And one of the things that they came out with, or that was like clear from that research, is that giving is actually up. So there's from a net giving standpoint. So there's less people donating overall, but the people who are donating are writing bigger and bigger checks. To me, there's a little bit of a double-edged sword there, takeaway. And it does concern me. I'm thinking about this in the context also of like some of the Giving Tuesday stuff that's been coming out. Like Giving Tuesday was up this year, which I think is a good sign. There's been a lot of economic uncertainty, to say the least, just in general, but also how it affects philanthropy. The thing that I'm a little bit worried about, though, is like, I don't want philanthropy and social good to become something that only the billionaire class can do, right? And that wasn't necessarily the takeaway from the study, but it is pointing to a trend that if less and less people are participating in philanthropy, in donating, in social good, and supporting organizations, I see that as a net negative, especially because of stories like the one you just shared, where you're securing gifts from well-off individuals for sure, but not billionaires, right? And I think I'd just be curious to hear like how you're thinking about how those trends are going, and how that's affecting your thought process as you do major donor fundraising at the Seymour Center. Yeah,
it begs the question of the value of, say, lower and mid-level giving.
Yeah.
In the midst of this trend, right? I mean, this is a prioritization exercise, right?
Yeah.
So as an executive director, I've got my fundraising team, and they're amazing. And we have to make really, really disciplined decisions about how we're spending our time.
Yeah.
And we have financial targets we have to hit. And so there's this constant tug of like, well, we've demonstrated that we can pull in these major gifts and fund these big projects when we need to. And at the same time, if that's the only place we put our energy, we are excluding the very community that birthed this place and continues to support it when they visit and bring their kids and participate in our programs. And so, the campaign I mentioned earlier, that first $350K came from a handful of major donors, but we're going to be running another phase of the fundraising, and it's going to be a community-oriented campaign as an invitation and as a show of gratitude in a way, to say like, hey, we're all in this together.
Yep.
We don't expect the same return from that campaign, but that was a decision we had to deliberately make. Like, did we want to spend the time doing that or not?
Yeah, and I think this is different for every org, right? You're a regionally focused org, and Santa Cruz is a particularly philanthropic, community-focused organization or situation here, in the sense that like everyone, especially, I think, cares a lot about the environment and climate. I know we talked about that a lot when we were working on your case for support, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I did want to also just take a moment to shout out a couple other wins from a fundraising standpoint. Let me reference my notes here from some of our clients this year who just kind of killed it, honestly. So Elkhorn Slough Foundation, a marine sanctuary, and an awesome institution, $13 million capital campaign this year.
Congratulations, Elkhorn Slough Foundation.
So they're killing it. Constructive Dialogue Institute just secured a $4.5 million grant from the John Templeton Foundation, which is about their annual operating budget to date, as far as I understand it. Another client of ours, New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, $14 million gift from McKinsey Scott's Foundation. one of our clients, Stem from Dance, was selected for OpenAI's People First AI Fund. So we're getting some, really good results that we're seeing even in our small portfolio of clients. There's others that I'm not mentioning here, of course, but just want to kind of call out. It's been really rewarding to see, especially in this year when there's been, so much talk about funding being down, about philanthropy being down, about the sector being down. In my work, I'm seeing these huge wins from these growing nonprofit organizations, and it just gave me a lot of hope and kept me going. I specifically remember going to the gala for Elkhorn Slough's Foundation as they celebrated that, and it came at a time where I kind of really needed a positive kick in the butt to keep going. So that's been keeping me in motion this year.
I'm curious how the team at Cosmic shares in these wins. What does it mean to you and your team when your clients score these huge wins?
I mean, selfishly, there's always this great, our clients are flush with some cash, and not that we always see a lot of that, but it's just we want to see the orgs that we support be healthy. So there's that kind of pragmatic, good, they're going to be able to keep investing in us, investing in their team. But more so than that, it's just we want to see our clients win, and more so than ever, as we've shifted our model more and more towards partnership-based work and ongoing partnerships with clients versus only one-off projects. We want to see those wins happen, and we want to see that growth sustain over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the classic sort of success for someone like you is defined by your client's success, right?
Exactly.
And it's a testament to the leadership and the sort of creativity you bring to the sector, right? To see some of your work, I would presume, play a role in some of those big wins.
Yeah.
That's got to feel great. And that's got to be something that I hope you and everybody on your team is hanging their hat on.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's a little bit more behind the scenes. It's hey, we did a big rebrand and we're watching this organization grow after that rebrand. How much of that can we claim, right? But, there's been a couple times this year, especially Elkhorn Slough specifically said, hey, we couldn't have done this without your help. And even though we weren't, closely involved at all in the capital campaign, just to set the record, we did a lot of foundational work around, their digital presence, their branding. That matters a lot, even in those campaigns where sometimes people are oh, this is all about, closed door meetings behind the scenes. And, I've just learned the more and more I do this that it all matters, right? Every part of it matters. And people are really good at kind of assessing the whole of an organization, even if they have really strong relationships with the people. All these signals, including your brand, including your website, including your communications, including how you treat your staff and how they show up and how they feel, it all matters.
This year, actually, just a few weeks ago, we wrapped up a Case for Support project together.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're eating our dog food. We built the studio. We're building up a content engine here. And we did a Case for Support with you and your team. And we've only had it in our hands a couple of weeks, but I can be a firsthand testament to the power of having that narrative tight and concise and really inspirational. I mean, we are already seeing conversations from really influential philanthropists in this community excited about what we've put together.
Nice.
Volunteering to help bring more of those high net worth donors to the table to help raise the money. So we're still so early. This is just a few weeks in.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that it has changed the way that we're able to communicate about our work.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, literally before we were recording this, I was talking to my team, doing some retrospectives, and we've done a handful of Case for Support processes with clients. And, it's been early. We've seen some earlier in the year, some later in the year. So it's good to get some of those early signals. But I also want to ask you on the client side there, what was that process like? Because I get to hear this from clients, but we're friends and we're mixing everything here, right? Everything's on the table. I mean, from our side, it was awesome to work with you all, of course. But my sense is that we asked some pretty tough, pretty existential, sometimes difficult to answer, really just kind of sometimes even poking some of the open sores of an organization where they're we know that part's not quite perfect. So I'm curious just how that influenced you and your team's thought process, identity, relationship with the work that you all are doing.
I mean, I'm going to straight gas you up right now because it was all good. No, dude, it was so good. We had a strategy in mind that we had been kind of honing and working on for a couple of years. So we came to the table with some ideas about what we wanted to say.
That's right.
And how we wanted to say it. And, a couple members of my team were part of the process too. And I got to say that a few things. A, Now, granted, again, like you had a little bit more sort of knowledge about our organization just because you...
A little unfair advantage.
A little bit of
Let's be
unfair
real.
advantage, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you had some context that maybe you wouldn't have if you came in cold.
Right.
That said, you asked us questions that forced us behind the scenes after our sprint meetings were complete.
Mm-hmm.
Where me and Annie and Lauren had to look at each other in the eyes and really ask each other some hard questions about what was important, what was really the most important thing to put forward, and how to do it. So I credit you and your team for teeing up a set of questions that we hadn't grappled with together as a team before.
Right.
And the result, well, I mean, it's going to continue speaking for itself, but I can say the early signals have been super positive. Also, I got to give you guys mad props for how tight your sprint meetings are. They're like 20 minutes, you're in, you're out, you know what needs to happen next, and we move on. So, I mean, I've never been with a client, or with a vendor, I should say, that was so tight with their meetings. So kudos to you on that one.
When you run as many meetings as we do, you make each one of them count, my friend. Hey friends, real quick before we continue today's episode. I'm Eric Ressler, founder and creative director at Cosmic. Cosmic is a creative agency purpose-built for nonprofits and mission-driven organizations. For the last 15 years, we've helped leaders like you nail your impact story and sharpen your strategy. But we're not here to just leave you with a fancy slide deck and a pat on the back. We roll up our sleeves and help you bring our ideas to life through campaigns, creative, and digital experiences. Our work together helps you earn trust, connect deeply with your supporters, and grow your fundraising and your impact. If you value the thinking we share here and want it applied to your biggest challenges, let's talk at designbycosmic.com. All right, back to today's conversation. I know we'd, through our dinners and through the pod, we've been talking about this stuff, but having the opportunity to like really go deep on it in a full way with my team, not just me and you riffing, I think probably from your side too, getting that team input, huge, right? And we've done episodes on this. We'll link to some of them in the show notes about, what even is a case for support? What should the framework be? What should those questions be? We've broken all that down into detail. I mean, we ran that, right? Like what we broke down in our podcast, that's the exact framework we used with you and your team. And, we've made some slight refinements and it's slightly personalized per client, but for the most part, like that thing is humming, man. And it gets right into the depth of like what questions you really need to be clear on as an organization if you want to, communicate for major donor solicitation, but even just in general, like how do you tell your story? We hear a lot of people saying, hey, we're having trouble telling our story. And the more and more we've been doing this, the more we realize it's because there's these questions that everyone kind of has intuitively or explicitly that you have to be able to answer. And a lot of times, just to be honest, people come to us, they can't answer them. They're just not clear, or there's not consensus, or the way that it's answered is not inspiring, it's not emotional. And so it's been really cool to more deeply integrate that framework into our messaging, doing it as actual case for support projects, but also just like when we're doing rebrands, a lot of those same kind of questions coming into the mix.
I'd be happy to share a link to our case for support for our viewers to check out.
That'd be awesome,
what we came up with. Yeah, I'd be delighted to do that. So I'm really proud looking back on 2025 of building up this branding and storytelling engine.
Yeah.
And like truthfully, that was inspired by our work on Designing Tomorrow together and our dinners, eating fried chicken and hanging out with kids in the backyard. This is really, really inspired and helped me gain clarity on the steps I was going to need to take as an executive director to build up this engine. So the case for support was just one of those things.
Yeah.
Building this studio is really sort of a bigger sort of capacity building play for the future.
Yep.
I've also started experimenting internally with a different sort of business model for how to produce more content from our partners. For us, the problem exists is that we've got scientists and community partners who have amazing stories to tell, but don't have the time or expertise or money to produce those stories or channels for distribution.
Right.
We're not content creators, but we have a great network of people who are. So this role we've begun playing is almost like a broker, like a content broker,
right,
and a matchmaker between people who have the stories to tell and the people who have the creative power to tell those stories.
Yeah.
And so we've experimented now a few times with playing this role of connecting, being that connector between the story holder and the storyteller, and we found a way to make that work financially for us. So these three things, the case for support, building the studio out, and sort of testing out this brokerage, this content brokerage, like I look back on that and I know that's gonna really help us take off in 26.
Yeah, I mean, man, I just want to say, like, kudos to you for making a big move on that, right? Because I think we see a lot of people who say they want to do storytelling, who say they want to make a content engine, who say they need to get these stories out there, and you just don't see it in their investments, right? You don't see it in their energy, you don't see it in the dollars. Like, building this studio was an investment, right? And we were intentional about how we did it, and we're reusing some equipment from the backyard to like get it kickstarted, right? But like, it wasn't a small line item for you, it was a big swing. And not even just the studio build out, but the energy that I know you're putting into it every day in terms of hours, but even just in terms of like mind share that I can tell you're spinning on it. And I think it's a really cool, much needed thing for the community. And I think that there's too much of this good work happening that stays hidden, that stays behind the scenes. And, it's tough to get stories out there these days. Channels are noisy, formats are always changing. But I think the more that we can actually value that deeply, I think there was like recently a Wall Street Journal article that came out at the time of this recording that was like, storytelling's like the big headline again. It's just like these things happen in cycles, right? And I remember very distinctly, and some listeners may listen to this and say like, dude, I was using the word storytelling 20 years ago. Our studio downtown, our tagline used to be designers, storytellers, strategists, right? And then we started getting a lot of flack for, storytelling is such a buzzword, and like, what do you mean you're a storyteller, right? So it's like, at the end of the day, we are story-driven creatures. Like we relate more to stories and to people than we do to just facts and just figures and statistics. I believe there's a role for both of those things. I just think there's room for more of all of it. There's room for all of it to come up in how we shape this sector. And I'll tease a little bit of what we talked about with Brady on the show, Brady Josephson from Charity Water. This is poster child organization around storytelling. Well, let me tell you, like, those folks are investing in it. It is not just lip service. And, I'm talking to Brady and he's blowing my mind because he's talking about this in the same way that I look at other sectors who are, I'll just be blunt, at a whole nother level when it comes to doing this work. And I want to see the social impact sector not be this like secondary citizen around storytelling. It needs to be core to the work, and to see, you, a relatively small regional org, take a really big swing on that. Like, I just know it's going to pay off for you guys.
I do too. And what's been awesome, and actually another sort of element of my look back on 2025 is I feel really proud of, my growth as an executive director, and sort of getting the team and the organization, including, student staff and volunteers and supporters, sort of starting to be aligned with this strategy and making sure everybody has a clear sense of how they fit in.
Yeah.
And I bring that up just to say that when it came to building up this content engine and getting the studio going and doing the case for support, and imagining and dreaming how we might make use of, say, this studio, it forced me to be really clear about what outcome was most important for said storytelling initiatives.
Yeah. And
there's a number of outcomes, but I think I think the thing I want to avoid is saying, storytelling is great for storytelling's sake.
Yeah, totally.
Because, when in my role, like, I got to make sure the rubber hits the road and we're producing either impact or money, and the content that we produce needs to serve one of those two purposes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, I and what I'm learning is that as you invest, the impact and that financial return comes.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about this in much more detail in a future episode, but could you just tease like what I've experienced, and just hearing you talk about this, it feels like your whole team and the whole community is just buzzing about this, right? Like, I mean, that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I think that comes from a couple of things. I think we have a flagship project that's highly visible.
Yeah.
And that is bringing just attention to the center, because that's a word of mouth kind of project.
Right.
So I think that's a part of it. And I'm referring to the blue whale skeleton.
Right.
But also what I feel really proud of this year was honing in this idea of Science Solutions Santa Cruz. Mm-hmm. And just these three words or phrases, and repeating them over and over and over and over again to anybody who will listen, and repeat the story of where we came from and where we're headed and what's happening now and how to get involved, repeating that until I'm blue in the face.
Yeah.
Making sure that everybody on my team understands that how Science Solutions Santa Cruz shows up in their own work,
Yeah.
and the impact that they're making, and setting goals related to those things. Building initiatives, sort of big swing initiatives that we outline in the case for support that are coming back to Science Solutions Santa Cruz and the impact that we deliver on this region. And I think it's just, honestly, you wrote an article, and I don't think this one came from an interview you did. I think this just came from your own brain, but this idea of kind of like growth not being linear.
Oh yeah. That's I think it was titled "Growth Isn't Linear; It's Cyclical."
That's it. Yeah. And so I think where we're at is actually representative of that exact phenomena.
Yeah.
This moment and the sort of the buzz that Santa Cruz is experiencing around Seymour Center is not an overnight phenomenon.
Yeah.
Right. This is many years of building this new direction and this new vision and repeating it. But we just kept banging that drum. We kept banging that drum as long as things were working and we were moving in the same direction. And so I think that's what got us to where we are today. But ultimately, I think what accelerated us was getting everybody aligned on their role in bringing Seymour Center to this next phase of our existence.
Yeah, I want to riff on that just a little bit with kind of a funny way of thinking about it. So like sometimes all of a sudden I will make a big move personally. Like there'll be an instrument that I've been looking at for months, if not years. And I'll make a choice to like make an investment in that instrument, for example. And sometimes my wife will be like, why are you buying this thing kind of like on a whim? And like what she doesn't know, and we talk about this, is not like I'm just a rogue here, like spending money, but what she doesn't know is that like I've been like secretly deeply researching that for years, thinking about it like hundreds and hundreds of times, maybe not talking about that. And I think there's a similar phenomenon with like big moves like this, where, with the Whale project or with the Seymour Center Studios, it might seem like this kind of like knee-jerk thing, but there's so much that happens kind of behind the scenes to get there that was teed up for this, from like coming on and being a co-host and starting to get comfortable with producing media and starting to see the value of not just the production and the distribution of that, but the process behind it, the personal change that happens from that. And so I think that's just something to keep in mind for listeners who are, wondering about like, how do we make some of those big moves? It's like, you have to start somewhere and you have to just be relentless in your pursuit of that vision, right? And not let the setbacks, stop you from doing that, which leads to, I actually want to connect this back to a piece that I wrote earlier this year that I wrote in kind of actually one of the most difficult times of the year for me. It was called "What If It's Not All Falling Apart?" And what I actually started to realize is that I had gotten swept up in a lot of the uncertainty, the negativity in the sector. This year, honestly, has been a little bit of a roller coaster for us in terms of just like feeling like we're moving from crisis to crisis at times. And, I had realized the reflection that kind of led to me writing the piece is that as I was out there kind of talking to people, in my personal life, even professionally to a degree, people are like, "Hey, how are things going for you?" And in an effort to be kind of honest and not just like surface level, for a while I was just answering, honestly, this year's been a shit show, and it felt that way, and it was true to a degree. Like objectively, you could look at this year in the sector, and even for us at Cosmic and for me, and there were signals that it had been a shit show. It was tough, and we've gotten through it, and we're in a really strong place right now, but it's been hard. But what I realized is that internal framing, even as I was, communicating it externally, it was more than that. It was like, that was my frame for like, I'm waking up to a shit show today. I'm waking up. And those beliefs drive your actions. They drive your perception. They drive like how you show up in real life, how you show up in your work. And I had to make like a really conscious effort to say, no, like I'm not going to continue to accept that as my reality right now, in spite of all of the objectively difficult things that are going on that I see happen in the world, that I see happen for our clients. And as soon as I made that switch, the world changed. And it wasn't like an instant thing. Like it was hard. Like I had to be very reflective. But since that's happened, new opportunities have emerged. There's been a huge reframe for me mentally. It's like caused me to get back on track. And I think I made some excuses around, like, I know some of the things that keep me happy, healthy, motivated, effective at work. And I turned some of those things off because this year's a shit show. Like, oh, it's not going to be how it is this year. I'm going to have to grind. And, some of that needs to happen sometimes. But as I've gotten like more and more back into my flow and reframing around that, the world is a reflection of that mindset. And so that's been a big shift for me. I turned 40 this year. It's been a big, midlife crisis as part of that as well. Just kind of like feeling that age, feeling, that transition into just unobjectively old. And listeners who are older may like listen to that and think that's silly, but it's a big milestone. And so I think all of that was kind of wrapped up. So I'm excited to be sitting here at the end of 2025. This is my last week of the year, professionally. Have some really exciting things going on in the new year. This studio has been like a huge light amongst all the difficulty as well, and like being part of building that out and having you trust me to do that. So yeah, man, thanks for being there along the ride.
I'm right on your heels. I turned 40 in May, so I'm coming for you. No, and I like on the personal reflection side of things, like something I think I've learned, and actually I made some mistakes in some of my personal relationships this year, and I think that was really scary for me, and but just I have wonderful people in my life, and they, one of the things that I've kind of learned through therapy and just self-reflection and stuff is this power of vulnerability and this power of like radical honesty. And so I look back and I feel like those two things were a big theme in my 2025, but it emerged in my personal life, but I find myself bringing those things to work too.
Yeah.
And my conversations with my team and with my donors,
yeah,
and collaborators around the community, and it feels so freaking good.
Yeah.
And it's something that I want to carry into 2026 is this vulnerability and radical honesty. And it's been a superpower. And I don't know, I feel like at 40 years old or nearly 40, like I should have learned this a long time ago, but here we are.
It's always a journey, man.
Yeah.
And I think, to listeners who are still with us in this episode and just in general, thank you for being part of this little show that is starting to punch above its weight, man, in my opinion. And I'm not talking about necessarily like listenership or influence, more so like we're having some conversations that I'm really proud of with some of the guests that we've gotten on and the work that we've done together. And I'm just really optimistic for what this space gives us, is this time to do this. Driving over here today, had some time to reflect. We'll send some stuff out to the feed that just shows like how beautiful this place is that we're lucky to call home, and specifically this campus in the Seymour Center and where we're recording today. But yeah, Jonathan, I mean, first of all, good to have you back, man. Really excited for what's coming on the show and to have you back in the mix, and to have you along as a friend too.
Hey, likewise, and welcome to Seymour Studios.
The first episode. Thank you, listeners and viewers, and many more to come.
Thank you, Eric.
If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe, or even leave us a comment. It really helps. Thank you. And thank you for all that you do for your cause and for being part of the movement to move humanity and the planet forward.